Hi there. I'm JP LeBreton. I'm a game designer, and today I have the honor of being joined by id Software co-founder John Romero. We're going to be looking today at the landmark first-person shooter game Quake, the original Quake, which came out 25 years ago this past June. First, John is going to walk us through some of the game's levels with commentary, and later we'll switch to a fireside chat format for various questions about the game's development. Welcome, John.
Hey, how's it going? Nice to see you again, JP. And thanks for having me again, GDC. And I'm excited to play Quake and talk about it. It kind of reminds me of the last time JP and I were going through Doom. And this time we'll be going through Quake. And this will be the first time that I have actually done this, where I've gone through Quake and talked about the levels and architecture and everything. So I think it's going to be fun.
All right. So yeah, we're gonna switch over to the game now, I guess. And yeah, what do we have up first, John?
Well, I think everybody knows this start level, and I called it start because that's where the game begins. And when you come into the game, you're right here, and when you go to single player, you just say you want to play a new game, and you start right here. And you haven't chosen a difficulty yet. So that's kind of what I decided. Why don't I put the difficulty into the level and then choosing the episode that you're going to play in the level? So you kind of remove some UI and just make it 3D and see how that feels. And so that's why I have the easy corridor here where there's nothing to do really. And then the normal one, and then the hard one where you're actually jumping over lava and everything.
Right. Whereas Doom, by comparison, when you started a new game, it would say, well, what episode do you want to play? And then what difficulty setting do you want to play? And that was done in the UI. Whereas here, it's just, yeah, you're already in the world.
Yep. And games still do stuff through the menu, which is, of course, nothing wrong with that. But I was just kind of experimenting and wanted to see kind of what it was like. And I liked it because it felt like I was just getting in the game as fast as possible. And with Doom, you're like hammering the enter key to hurry up and get in. And in Quake, you just kind of bam, bam, and you're in. So we have these different episodes here where the first episode is over on the left here. And this is like a collection of the design team that did the levels here in the first episode. And then the second episode is my levels. And the third episode is American McGee's levels, and the fourth episode are Sandy Peterson's levels. So yeah, the one of the interesting things about Quake that I wanted to, when I was thinking about how do I finish this? Well, I wanted the player to go through each of these episodes and collect a rune key at the end of the episode, and when they got back to the center, that would basically unlock the next part of the next episode, basically. So you would have to go through all the episodes. You have to go through episode 2 to get the key for 3, go through 3 to get the key for 4, and then go through 4 to basically come back to the start here. And so let's say you've already unlocked all the episodes. You'd basically come back through here, and when you came through this door, this entire floor is gone, and there's a stairway going down to the final level. And I thought that would be fun for the player to, they've seen this room so many times, but they never saw it without the floor in it, and that would be kind of a cool surprise, and just like, oh my gosh, let me go down here and check this out. So I thought that having something that took us to different dimensions would be a way to kind of get the game organized. Because at the beginning, we didn't have really a lot of organization. There was a lot of experimenting with level design. And then the designers, we kind of settled into a palette of textures that we wanted to use. So we would have okay, we're going to go through the third episode, and it's going to be a metal lava, world. And we'll go through the second, and that'll be like a medieval, maybe watery kind of episode. So since you're in this level here, and I built this thing, I called it a slip gate. And I figured, well, this will be the thing that you just use to teleport to different dimensions and times. I wanted a military base theme like this room here to kind of tie the Slipgate technology and, basically if you go through Slipgate, you're going to end up in a military base, and you're going to, and you're going to end up past that point going to the episode. So you go through this first one, and now you're at a military base. So each of the 4 episodes, when you go through that Slipgate, you go to a military base level. And this one is like, oh, there's the destination pad. Here's the architecture, which was actually important to do everything that you see in this view here, coming from Doom, seeing the architectural differences in Quake, like these angles even, just right there, even though the alignment's not perfect, which back then it was just awesome to have an angle. Now it's just like annoying to not see the texture alignment is correct. But to even have an angle down, to have angled lights, all of this was brand new when Quake came out. Having the ability to look underneath a path that you're going to travel on like this. In Doom, everything was solid up until the point where you could actually move around on it. So this was a whole different world. So when people saw it, it was actually really interesting.
That's something I remember you saying from Doom. When you were making Doom, you were trying to one-up Wolfenstein. So your starting point was like making a room that couldn't possibly have been made in the previous engine. And obviously you're carrying that through here.
Yeah, that was the design rule. If you made a room that you could have done in the last engine, you failed. So, add some cool stuff to it. Put some sky in there. One of the interesting things about the Quake engine also is that the lighting model is completely different than Doom's lighting model, which was sector based. In this, you can see that when the light flashes, that the shadows and the light are flickering from on and off. You can see it's got some soft shadows going up that way. And the lighting is so different than Doom, just right there. And I wanted to show that off in the very first view from when you start, that the lighting even is different. And you can see there's some subtle shadows cast here on the ground. And the whole world is full of that. So in a room that may be a little simple, one way of fixing that is by putting a light source somewhere and then putting some bars around the front of it so it basically project shadows into the room. And you already have something that couldn't have been done in Doom, at least easily. You could draw shadows in Doom. And this was a secret door. And the secret door, when you shot it, it went in and slid sideways. And it was important that we use the secret door trigger and functionality to be consistent through the entire game. So all of the secret doors in Quake they move that way, whether you shoot them directly or you press a button or shoot something else that makes the door open. Design consistency was something we're trying to kind of go for.
It's definitely an early example of a designer creating like a prefab that they can then hand off to other level designers to just drop into their levels so that they don't have to worry about it. You solve the problem once and then you can replicate it.
Yep. The torch is a perfect example of that, because in Quake, to make a fire torch on the wall, you would have the torch that you attach to the wall. Then you have the fire, I believe the fire is part of the torch and it animates. And then you have to put the light on it. And then you have to put the sound effect there. So you have 3 entities per torch that you would have to place. And if you start moving stuff around, it just, you could accidentally leave something, or you might forget to, if you just delete it and build another one, maybe you forgot the sound or whatever. So if we just encapsulate the functionality into an entity and you just place the entity, then that makes it so much easier. And that was not something that was part of Doom's design, but that was Quake's design to ensure design consistency. And this door here was another big thing for me. It's a cool base theme kind of door, military base theme, but the line going through it that way means it's going to open like that. And you see your first full 3D character, fully textured and everything. And that door there opens and closes with a pretty cool sound. That was definitely, cooler than Doom. Doom had the classic Doom door sound, but it just opened and closed vertically, like all doors did in Doom. In Quake, doors can be anything. And so I thought, horizontal doors, they're in 2 pieces. So, and they open pretty quickly too. The other thing is that there's no use button in Quake. You just run up to stuff and it uses it automatically. So this first hallway is just packed full of new. And that's one of the things I wanted to do when the player first opened up the first level and started playing through it. Was like everything was new. It wasn't like, oh, this is like Doom Plus. I wanted them to see that this was actually pretty different, and the technology was improved, and it's actually easy. It's not like it's a more difficult game because it's in 3D. It needed to be easy to play still. So you get to see water, which people saw water in Doom, but it was an animated texture. This is a moving texture, and if you jump into it, you actually are walking through water, which you couldn't do in Doom. And then you find secret areas. You find your first power up. You see that there's a door that you touch, and it tells you something. Like, this stuff wasn't in Doom, so it was cool. It was cool to see this, and now you can kind of go under the water when you go right past this point. And now players know that you can actually go underwater. So there's underwater, holding your breath, and elevators that automatically open the door for you. So yeah, lots of really cool new stuff on this first level. And we're not even inside the building yet. We had a parallaxing sky, which did not happen in Doom. The nice thing design-wise that we did was we hooked up the water that you should hear, or we hooked up the sounds for the water to rendering the water on the screen, and we hooked up the sound, the sky sounds, to rendering the sky on the screen. So designers, we did not need to put sound effects for the water or the sky. The engine knew if it was being rendered, play it and loop it automatically. So that made it really nice. Just made it easier to make levels. And then we come in here, and look at that. That's an explosive box. Boom. They're both gone. And we brought back some Wolfenstein dogs. You can see that there's some animated textures on the walls. This one was actually a secret. So there's a matching one right there. If you just shoot the matching texture, you'll see that there's a quad, which, that's easy mode. Leave it alone. So the enemies at the beginning, you can see that they need to go down pretty quick with 1 or 2 shots. 1, 2. These guys are 2. Oh, he's not there. And then you get to see your next weapon, which is a nail gun. So first level, you start with a shotgun, you pick up a nail gun. We're already giving you, lots of cool stuff on this first level. And the nail gun is really effective, in fact. And then there's like a little hidden shootable thing, which will open up the double barrel shotgun. So you're getting 2 more weapons on the first level. 1 shot now with the double barrel. So you can see immediately like the effects of getting these new weapons. And then pressing a button, giving you a message saying that you get to press 2 more buttons to finish. 1 more button to finish. Sequence is complete.
This is the room that really kicks down the door as far as letting you know that you're not in Doom architecture anymore. You've got this sort of spiraling walkway thing.
Yeah, you have this whole seal. The lights coming up, the counting of the sequence. A cool secret right here. You can just see it right there, but here's how you get on it. You just kind of climb on stuff, and that's amazing.
Yeah, and that's a platformer thing, is like, seeing something up high and being, how do I get up there? And then working
And then
down.
you just do it, yeah. And it's not supposed to be that easy, but it's not supposed to be that hard either. And then you just get this cool thing and just fall down, nice and easy. And that's poison, so you're introduced to poison here on the first level. There's a cool suit. If you even looked over there, you'd find out that there's a suit for it. So if you if you decide to just like jump in right here in the corner or anywhere in that room, then you can take a swim and you can see that there's a cool secret here. You can come up the middle here. Another secret area. Get some cool armor and find yourself at the beginning of the level right above the door that you never would have suspected was a spawn point. So, yeah, the first level has a lot of cool stuff. The game does not have an auto map, which is interesting. It was because, geez, 3D levels, auto map, you know, we're doing a lot already. You know, with the technology in this game, trying to solve the auto map problem was one too many, so we didn't put in an auto map function. And some of the levels are kind of big that you would want an auto map. But if you could see this level in an auto map, you would see that it was a horseshoe. It basically goes, you know, it goes into a U. This is the end of the U, and if you go through this secret door here, you can see this was the water part, and up that elevator is the start room. So we kind of completed a big horseshoe, and then we get through here, walk in the slip gate to exit, and then you get to see the level from one of 4 camera positions. And you can see that the movement on the camera, there's a slight movement happening. And I had an idea during the development of Quake that what I want when the player stops is for them to have a slight movement, maybe not even this much of a movement, but just so you wouldn't see the world as static when you stopped. And John Carmack programmed a sine wave function into the player's camera that had a magnitude multiplier on it that was from 0 to 1. And I played around with it. And when I showed Adrian Carmack, I basically said to him, "What do you think about this?" And he's like, "That would make me sick." And I'm like, I'm not even arguing anymore. So I basically made the value 0, but that function is still in Quake, and I'm using it for the intermission. So I was like, I'm going to use it for the intermission. It's cool. It's in there, you know? So anyway, yeah, that's where that ended up. So you're at the end of finished a military tech base. And then you go to the first level through the slipgate, and now you're in like a medieval type thing. And there's some supply crates that came through the slipgate. So someone came in here already. And you can see that there's something over there dragging something bloody behind it. And then there's this guy. Nice and quiet. It is an ogre with a chainsaw. So these guys, if they're not hitting you with a chainsaw, they're shooting grenades at you. They're really funny. Yeah, these guys were really great. They're nice, tough. You know, they're like at the Pinky of Quake, I think. The ogres. And if you go under the water, you get to see, wow, this is great. You just have more level to play with down here, but with a time limit. And then you can see the hint, the green, that will then show you a secret area. And it's like, wow, look at this. Didn't have secret stuff like this in Doom. So yeah, lots of really cool, fun stuff in just the first, couple levels of the game. Just lots of passages, underwater. This level is a really good intro to like, oh, keys. You need a silver key. And okay, that's opening this up. So you can basically just go through here. You can see that there's a style here with the ceilings, with the red wood and the iron. Lots of good design stuff that's going to be consistent through the whole level and probably the episode. He just falls on his butt. So yeah, so this basically is I went to the back side of the door because I went through the sneaky secret area. So now I have to actually go the actual way, so I can get the actual key over here. And you can just run past stuff. That thing right there did not exist in Doom with the nail traps, So it was cool to be able to have the Quake C scripting language to let us just write scripts for things like that. Yeah. So now I got the key. So, nicely placed underwater elevators, platforms. Ooh, he's getting hit. And then just run past him. Gotta press the button back here to open that up. There we go. So yeah, we basically get past this level. Open that door. Now we can actually get to the final silver door. One of these guys. Two guys. And when you're in difficulty, when you're in the hard difficulty mode, we actually start spawning new monsters, which is something that we didn't have in Doom, where you would kill one monster and then it starts spawning new monsters in. It was definitely Doom was more limited than Quake. And that's normally where people get terrified to see the fiend come out. But I already knew he was coming out, so I'm just going to stand over there where the teleporters appear. Also, the teleporters in Quake are vertical, and in Doom, they were horizontal, like plates, like pentagram plates on the ground. If I was in hard mode, 2 more fiends would teleport into that room when I killed that first one there. So, yeah, it was nice having the dynamic difficulty spawn stuff. And, we got some knights to kind of reinforce the whole, like, this is medieval. And then get to the end. And so the endings also were consistent. There was, like, that big, huge door with the bones kind of going over it. That was something that we kept a consistent look for in the different episodes. So that's how this kind of flows. This episode's going to have... this is a camera looking at a cool graphic that you probably didn't notice when you're playing and like trying to kill monsters. But like here's a neat piece of art, and we can use our 4 cameras to reveal possible secrets that you may not have seen, or cool textures you probably didn't see. So yeah, we wanted. They weren't randomly placed. They were placed in strategic locations. So let's say you burn through this first episode and you come to the boss. And in Doom, we had the Baron, the Barons of Hell. We call them the Bruiser Brothers, and those were the first boss in Doom. And for Quake, we thought, why don't we have a really big boss that's just kind of scary? So on E1M7, it's called the House of Chthon. So that's like, oh wow, look at this rune here. Giant lava monster who's throwing fireballs, which will decimate you if they hit you. They look small, but they hit 50 times harder than they look.
And they really knock the viewer around too, so you feel like you're being bombarded.
And he's really good at predicting, basically your speed and where you're going to throw. Okay, it needs to be all the way down to hit him, and you have to do it, I think, a few times. So as long as you can, pause so his throw is garbage, and then wait for it to come down and hit him again. You just do it a few times. But it's something that was more. This is more ornate of a solve than Doom, which was just pure shotguns and rockets and stuff. So
yeah, the Cyber Demon and the Spider Mastermind, you basically just, you were in a big arena with them and you just had to shoot them until they died. Whereas here, you could do something a little more bespoke with level scripting and with Quake C, of course.
Yes, and so that's what we did. We wanted to have something that was different, and that was pretty cool. And I think we have to go over here to the end. Is it this? Yeah. There's the door. Oh, it's over there.
Oh yeah, the bridge extends.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Here we go. Wait a minute. It's over here. Yeah, because we have to come out here and then go down. Of course you're going to get hurt. But it's cool because it's like, look at this room down here. Couldn't have done that in Doom. You know, had this room under that part where you were at, with just cool angled fire stuff. You can go behind it. Sometimes I would put a back end teleporter, so both sides of the teleporter go somewhere different on some of my levels.
Good secret possibilities.
Yeah. This was just like, why don't we just jib a bunch of stuff as a celebration? So all kinds of random monsters just got jibbed there. Yeah, it's jibbed, not gibbed.
As in giblets.
Exactly, giblets. That's where it comes from.
So we're at about 26 minutes here. Are there other levels you wanted to look at before we switch to the fireside chat?
Sure. Yeah. Let me jump in to episode 2. Let's say level 5. This one's, and I'll just impulse 9 myself, which is a nice cheat. So this is like one of my favorite levels that I made, the Wizard's Manse, and I had a speedrunning competition back in 1997 to see who could do this the fastest, and I did it in 1 minute and 5 seconds, and the winning person did it. Ow, nice. The winning person did it in 40 seconds. A guy named Clock, and I'm like, wow, this speedrunning thing is insane.
And Quake Done Quick was sort of the genesis of the modern speedrunning community in a lot of respects.
Yeah, that was amazing too. Yeah, like those were some great demos. So this was, the second episode. Then when you get to the third episode, you can see it's like this cool iron look that American came up with. Oh, goodbye key. And then those zombies could only be killed with rockets or grenades. If you shot them, they would just go down like that guy, just take some damage and then get right back up. So you really do have to blow them up. This guy just gets back up. So he had a really great style with this episode. Lots of really good stuff. And then Sandy's episode, Sandy had like probably probably about some of the most fun levels because of how sneaky they were. They were really like game designers levels. They were big, they were sneaky. He was definitely more of a puzzle guy, and so his levels had some really fun puzzles, and they were big. This is a big whole area, and because of it, after people discovered rocket jumping, you could just rocket jump all over the place. I mean, you could really break the levels pretty, like, big time. My second, if you ever when you get to the second episode, and you got here, after rocket jumping, it just blew me away that someone got through this level in 11 seconds. And it was just because they just rocket jumped their way up there,
right?
And then they just got to the exit, and that was it. I was like, they jumped across the whole level right there, because otherwise that actually takes a while to get through. So yeah, rocket jumping was pretty insane. And then we had some deathmatch only maps, which didn't happen when we shipped Doom. So this was DM3 was my map, which I think a lot of clans decided to use this map because it has this cool central section, and this side has a rocket launcher and a yellow armor and also a pentagram down here, and this is a central circle with a power right there, and on that side you have an invisibility ring, and you have a red armor. Nice, great. You have red armor in this room here, which is just like a death trap basically for people trying to go up here. And a computer room, and it's kind of a nice big deathmatch map that a lot of people like playing. And this is just like a bunch of computers. And this actually would have been C-shaped computers if our deal with Cray had not gotten killed because they were bought by Silicon Graphics. These would have been C-shaped Cray machines. That was in respect for Cray's. But the deal fell apart, so we just didn't do it. but yeah, so this was the deathmatch level that I made, and yeah,
it's a classic.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, yeah. Do we want to switch over to the fireside chat part of the portion of the proceedings now?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for showing us all that stuff. Yeah, there's a lot that we'll probably call back to here. So yeah, I've got some questions prepared here, and just feel free to go take these wherever you want. There was one thing, so like this game had quite a development cycle. It was really it was difficult, and there was a lot of work that was thrown out and stuff like that, and and it kind of changed the course of id Software's history, obviously. I remember reading one of years after Quake came out, one of John Carmack's plan updates, where he was just basically blogging about technical topics, and he was like, towards the end of Quake 1's development, I was thinking that we might have been better off splitting Quake into two different games, one where we innovated on the graphics side, and then one where we did all the other technical stuff like Quake C and all that. And I remember reading that back in the day, and I always wondered what your perspective and what other folks on the team were like. Is this something that the Quake team ever discussed during development? It seems like it would have had a really big impact on the studio's future and how the project and its legacy. I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot of roads not taken. And any thoughts on that kind of stuff?
Yeah, we did not think about that. It was funny because we didn't think about it because we're still a really small company, and we didn't see ourselves as having two teams internally. John was against hiring people and making the company bigger because we were such a single-minded entity. So like Quake was the main game, and it was like expected everyone was going to be on Quake, making Quake. It would have been a really great idea if we would have decided to, hey, why don't we take the Doom engine and make another game? Maybe not Doom, but maybe make something else using the engine, modify the engine a little bit to make it kind of cool, like the way that Raven modified Hexen and had cool broken glass, and they had rotating BSP doors and lots of really good stuff in Hexen. If we would have done things like that and made a different game, that would have kept our dev team really busy, and we would have made another product while John, Abrash, and American could have had a tech team building the Quake tech, and whenever that was done, like no pressure. If we already have an engine and we have a dev team to make games, there is no pressure to make the Quake tech like finished as fast as possible. I think that we would have survived as a company. We would have actually have split, intelligently split our efforts into next gen and current gen, and those teams may have gotten a little bit bigger because we probably would have needed more people to get all that stuff done. That would have been cool. Too bad we didn't have that idea back then. That would have been really nice. Looking back, it's really sad that we didn't, because we would have stayed together. But companies now do that. And it's funny to think that Quake was so long in making this game. It was crazy. It was 18 months from the start of Quake to shipping it. For us, that was insane because Doom took us 1 year. And after a year, we're just like, oh my God. Because before that, we were making games in 2 months. So Wolfenstein was the game that kind of like, wow, we're going to spend as much time as it takes to make a really good game. And it took us 4 months to get that shareware episode out there. And we felt like, man, we had so much time. This is nuts. And then Doom was just like, okay, we're just going to just do it, make the best game that we can. And it took 1 whole year, which was, a lot longer than Wolfenstein. And then with Quake, it was like, okay, we're way past the expiration date on this thing. This is horrible. It's a year and a half. Which is not much,
Yeah, the industry. Yeah, nowadays a long-running project on the industry. Yeah, is
especially when you're innovating so much. I mean, Quake had mouse look for the first time. It had internet multiplayer. It had full 3D, which was actually the hardest part of it because, it was the first game made for us with a client server architecture on, and that was the base of the game. The game was written on top of that. So from day one, we were playing a game with a local client and a local server and a client connecting to it internally on your own machine, and that was going to be the way that games were made going forward. So we did that, and making Quake C. So like, why not script everything? Why burn everything into C? And Quake was in C. It was not in C++. We needed to know every cycle. We did not want any C++ runtime function calls that could steal cycles from our renderer or gameplay. In Quake C was written in C. It was very tight.
Yeah. Speaking of Quake C, just a quick question about like the timeline of development. It sounds like y'all started developing like in late 1994, kind of. Or
the plan, yeah, it was probably around December, like officially January, because we did our Christmas vacation thing. We had shipped Doom 2, and I also, right after Doom 2, I wrote the Dwango client, and I was finishing Heretic, so I had to fly up to Raven.
Oh, right, yeah.
Help finish that game. So from Doom 2 to the end of the year was a bunch of work. Just dealing with like the response was huge. But then 1995 was like officially when we're starting. So that was like Quake Ed is now, I'm working on Quake Ed. John's working on architecture. Abrash wasn't at the company yet. He came in 1995, probably around March, I believe. So a lot of stuff happened in a short amount of time.
Right.
But yeah, it was probably around the beginning of January 95. Quake C was really important for John to free himself from having to write every single thing and let the designers do that. So it came online around, I believe, April or May is when Quake C was there to script, the nail gun for the first time, and doors opening and stuff like that. Platforms came later, probably in the beginning of 96. But there was so much to do. There's so much to do with just making the levels, which was a horrendous process.
Right.
It was so hard. And so those were what took most of our time. Like the scripting was very easy. It was so easy to write stuff in Quake C.
But that sounds like, Quake C seems like a situation where, you were talking about, if only we could have decoupled, these aspects of the company and the technical innovations that we wanted to do. But Quake C does sound like it empowered you, and it did actually, like development would have gone a lot worse if you had stuck with the Doom kind of architecture for mods and scripting and stuff. Yeah, it was really, really nice having Quake C, and nowadays people use Lua. So level design process. How did you and the other level designers communicate during level development? Did you regularly play each other's stuff? Did y'all have like level reviews or feedback sessions, or was it more one-to-one? And how did that communication process change after y'all changed the office format in early 1996? You went to the war room where you knocked down all the walls and everybody was just really crunching. Doesn't sound like a fun time, but like, I don't know. Yeah, talk about that process.
So because the design for Quake was not like solidified at all during 1995, we were basically like, I had to get the level editor written so the team could make levels. And in American, John needed American to basically use Quake Ed to make a whole lot of little, technical level, little snippets of levels, because he had to do it for Quake C. How do we hook entities and stuff up through scripting in Quake C to level entities? Lots of stuff was happening. So we were just getting used to building stuff in 3D for the first time and figuring out like, what scale will we have? How big should these levels be? What does it feel like? What's good to for space, for moving around and shooting things. Like, because if you put in the grenade launcher and you put it into where it feels good, that might change the way that levels, the size of levels should be made. You wouldn't want a lot of tight corridors. And Quake doesn't have a lot of tight corridors because of the weapons that we have in it. So as the ideas were forming, there was no there was no specific way that we needed to make levels. There wasn't a plan for what the game design should be, because I was hoping that when the engine was done, that we could start spending time figuring out, well, what kind of game will this be? We're making levels, not for real. I mean, we're getting good at 3D architecture and kind of settling into styles, individual styles. We were playing around with creating some weapons that we might want in the game, but nothing was solidified, because to me, like when we made the stuff together, John was focused 100% on the gameplay stuff whenever it was time for us to get that gameplay stuff going. And he wasn't at the time, because he was basically making the engine. So I was kind of waiting for the engine to get done so I could be basically with John and we could focus on what is going to be really cool. Let's do a few experiments. But by the time November rolled around and the engine was ready, the team was just like, so they wanted to just make a decision, just let's finish this thing. So the decision was, after we had talked for a long time, hours, the decision was just make an FPS and just get the game done. We're just so burned out from not making. We're thinking that we're making something, but it wasn't really happening. So with level design, level development, communication stuff, none of that was there at the beginning, because we didn't have a design to go for yet. We were just getting good at using this ever-changing engine. So when it was time to actually, okay, the engine's done, we can actually make the game. Okay, what kind of game do we want to do? And it was like, guess what? We don't want to work on like figuring out what kind of game we want to do. We just want to get done with what we know. Just get it out. Like this engine just pulled it out, pull a lot of stress out, or put a lot of stress in people. So at that point it was like, okay, we're going to make a shooter. So let me design the structure. And I thought, let's do 4 episodes instead of 3 episodes. 4 episodes to me feels like more value for people that are going to get 1/4 with shareware. They're going to get 3 more, 3 more of the same amount of content. Like, I'd buy that. So I decided, let's do 4 episodes, and here are all the levels that we have. Like, what levels can we even like salvage? What's salvageable? Because they need to actually be quality, and they need to feel like they have the right scale that's consistent between themselves. And then it was like, okay, I need to come up with something that ties them together. How about a military base that you go into that is the gateway to these other dimensions, and that something's going on, but we didn't script all of that stuff. We just kind of threw it in the manual saying there's an entity called Quake. So at some point, like right after November 95, when it was like, okay, I'm going to redesign this thing as just a shooter, we're just going to get it done. Then I did the level assignments. I found out from the other guys, like, what levels do you have that you think you can salvage? I got the actual file names of those things, and I put together a map of what those levels could be in episodes from one to the next. I just went through all the levels, kind of looking at the sizes. I don't want them to do too much more work to finish them. So let's go from small to the biggest within the episode. But there was still a lot of levels to make. We didn't even have maybe half the levels at the time that we did this design, because it was a lot of just tests. So putting together that list, it was pretty quick. It didn't take long to put that list together, but it took a long time to actually execute and make those levels, be good and feel good, and get the weapons in and get the monsters in, and like actually make the game. So from when we started to officially have a design on paper where people just have assignments until shipping the game, it was 7 months. And so that was 7 months. That's when we moved into the war room. We all got in the room together. I had my little design team to my left, and I was sitting right next to John, and John had his programming team to his right. And we just headphones and crank. And that's basically what we did for 7 months. I mean, it was crunch mode. It was not, it's funny, the team is so tired, but they know they need to finish this game, but no one was in crunch mode before. Everybody was just in like, are we making something? Like, are we shipping? Like, let's keep on making stuff. So there was no crunch until we did the war room. And then it was like, okay, here's the direction. This is what we're going to do. Everybody get it done as fast as we can. And then it was basically 7 days a week crunch mode for 7 months. And then when we did a beta probably around April, I think, May. That was a 38-hour straight, staying awake for 38 hours to get that thing ready. Q-test was easier. Q-test was, that wasn't even having to stay up late. That was just kind of getting a multiplayer only set of levels together. And we put that out in, the end of February of 96, and that went over really, really well. Got a lot of good feedback. So, we were making a game, we were getting stuff out there for test. We had a lot of Doom players wanting to see this for the first time. We'd already released a lot of screenshots. So people were excited to see a dragon. There's no way that was going to happen. But, we wanted it to happen. But when we got to the point where we were actually really making levels for real, and this is what the engine speed is, we didn't have the space, the rendering speed and stuff to actually have a big enough space for a big dragon. But people years later could put dragons in. But anyway, yeah, so we spent 7 months and we just cranked on it. It was really tough. There was still so much to do, in that 7 months, but that was really putting the whole game together with an engine that was basically done.
Yeah. It's such a shift in the creative process when you go from the possibilities are still open, and we know that we now have technology that can do so much, but then design really is its own R&D process, totally separate from tech a lot of times. And it must've been heartbreaking to get to that point where it's like, we could do a design R&D process, but that would probably take another year, or we could just take a design off the shelf that we've already done really well, and I can see the genuine conflict there. And I
know. Yeah. I think that if we did do prototyping on design stuff, it would have only been 2 months or so. There's no way I was going to want it to be longer. It's just it's when John and I focus together and start making something like that, it goes really fast.
Yeah.
And obviously everyone else would be involved in that, and everybody would be there thinking, feeling the game and kind of what's cool. And, we would have put visual triggers in there. We would have done a lot of really cool stuff. But we just needed to have that time to focus just on design to make something new that no one has seen before. People have seen FPSs before because we've been doing it for years. I wanted to do something that maybe had elements of FPS in it, but maybe some other stuff. But the fact that we didn't, and that decision at that time, to just get this thing done, we were so tired and worn down. For me, the fact that the owners, the other, my co-founders didn't stand behind the push on design too. We already pushed on tech. Now let's push on design. We can do better. The fact that they didn't want to stand up to doing that, for me, was the decision for me to just leave the company after Quake was done. So I contacted Tom Hall in January when we were really in crunch mode, and just told him, or asked him, hey, do you want to start another company after Quake is out? And he was making Prey at the time. So he's like, hell yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Quake 1, very much the album that broke up the band is what I've always thought of it as.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And it's a good point, about, that the design R&D process probably wouldn't have taken that long, because when you have great tech and great tools and you have a scripting language, I can totally believe that y'all could have come up with something. But you've also got the human beings who have their own energy levels and, their own desires that they want to see.
I mean, yeah, what kind of game are you going to ship, with just a totally burnt out team? I mean, that's kind of what Quake was. It's we're burnt out on not making something. Okay, here's the something we're going to make. Everybody's energy comes up because now they know what they're doing, and they can crunch because they know what they're doing and they like it. But it could have been something else, But that's fine. I mean, that engine can be used for anything. It was made to do that. So if I was still there after Quake 1, maybe it could have been okay, this is where we actually get to do that. But it was already too late. We'd already basically broken internally by that time.
Yeah. As far as other questions, something that, the way I've heard the genesis of Doom 2's city maps, the big open ones described as Sandy was working on a couple more wide open levels like map 13 downtown. And you liked the idea and decided to try and one up them with something like your map 15 industrial zone from Doom 2. Feel free to correct or corroborate, that however you like. But I'm curious about on Quake 1's development, where you had 4 level designers, 4 episodes. Were there comparable ideas for the development of those levels where an idea passed from one level designer to the other, or y'all were kind of like competing or riffing off one another or like borrowing from each other, stuff like that?
Yeah, I think that would have happened if we didn't like have to go as fast as we could to ship the game. So we didn't have, I think all that we had was like, here's a sheet for a level. And this is a checkoff sheet. This checkoff sheet is 4 secrets per level. Make sure the lighting is blah, blah, blah. Like here's a list of stuff. That's all that has to get done. Yeah, it's a production sheet. It's like if you can check all of these things off for each level, then you've got the minimum design stuff that will ensure some consistency. But if any of them wanted to do anything unique, go ahead. Like there were no rules on, well, you can't do this and you can't do that. It was like, do cool shit. That's all we care about. So yeah, but there wasn't any competition because we all had our own different styles and we wanted to make stuff in our style. So, there wasn't any, I wasn't like, oh, I'm going to destroy, like American's levels. He had his own completely different thing and it was great. Sandy, completely great. Like it was funny because when you talk about level 13 downtown, that was such a great level. And I made 15, and 15 is not as good as Sandy's downtown. I think if I'm going to play one or the other, I'll always choose downtown because it's not too big. I think 15 is too big. And I think his is just like, where do I go next? It's crazy, but the outdoor idea of making stuff outdoors, that actually was Tom Hall's idea for Doom's E3M6. That's the game. That level he actually started and then Sandy finished. But that was Tom's idea to have a big, like when he came up with the E2M2's crate maze idea for the first time. He came up with a cool outdoor area as well.
Awesome. I remember reading that early in Quake's development, Adrian and Kevin were making Aztec themed and like in addition to the medieval castle texture stuff. Was that you or another level designer asking for give me Aztec themed textures, or was that more just what they were doing because that was what was interesting to them? And like, how did that tie into, if anything, like a, overall direction?
Yeah. So the idea was to have 4 different episodes and like, gee, what could be the idea of those episodes? Like, where could they take place? And the idea of like, okay, this is going, like mine is going to be a medieval castle-y kind of place. And for American, let's do Aztec. Maybe there's some really cool stuff you can do with Aztec stuff. So I'm the one who told the level, the artist to do this texture set. And American tried to like it. he tried to, like make cool levels with it, but it just wasn't inspiring to him. It just didn't feel cool. And he basically came to me and said, you know what, I am not feeling it with these textures. I mean, they're good texture. They made good textures, but for me, I can't imagine architecture with these textures. It's just not, it doesn't feel badass. So, I went and I told them, American is not feeling it with the Aztec stuff. Can you make something else, like maybe dark iron stuff? That's what he likes. He wants some really heavy iron stuff. Because in Doom 2, we had some really good support 3, like those textures, the support textures had a feel that he liked. So it's like, how about that, but maybe even darker? So American liked that idea. And he might have even told me I want really dark iron because I think that would look really cool, especially if I have lava and it's like bright orange lava, dark iron. Like that might look really
That's his
cool.
trademark in Quake 1.
That's his thing. So, I think it is important for the designer to basically capitalize as much as possible with their look that they can see. Like he definitely, if he was forced to use Aztec textures, those levels would not be as good as they are. His levels wouldn't have been as cool. And so his levels look amazing and they're super fun and people hate him and his lava. But like, it's just like, you can't deny, he probably has the most played Quake level of all of them with DM4.
That's right. Yeah. And people, the designers each took their own styles into the deathmatch arena thing, which was influential in its own right, for sure. Yeah. Cool. Well, yeah, we've got like 2.5 minutes left here. Or I don't know. Did you want to move on to closing thoughts here? Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think? It was a lot of design lessons that we learned. We learned, definitely about development. Like, just people like to feel that they're finishing something, to have direction, and not everybody is good at R&D. And sometimes people don't know that they're doing R&D. So it is important. Like, we were not really good at communication back then. But it is really important to have like a defined production process like people have now in modern processes, where everything is kind of laid out and everybody is on a path at a certain time to do certain things. And games have definitely grown up since then. And, we were still back in the Wild West, just doing what we knew what to do based on our previous games, even though things really did need to change with Quake. And it was too late for changing. But, they did change eventually. I mean, everybody had to get better. We weren't using source control. I mean, there were a lot of things that we weren't doing back then. One time we were getting hacked by somebody trying to steal our source off of our Novell NetWare hard drive. And Carmack, just instead of Dave trying to figure out how to turn off the ports, Carmack went in the room and pulled the T1 out of the wall. That's how we stopped somebody from downloading our source. But yeah, Wild West days. It was fun.
I think, for all the history about the game's troubled development and, this creative chemistry questions and all that, I think it really does, like, there really is something very special about Quake 1. And I think that speaks to the talent, the passion and the individual styles. Everybody was kind of bringing their own creative talents, obviously John Carmack with the technical stuff, but then, all of the level designers and the texture artists, the amazing sound design, and of course the soundtrack by Nine Inch Nails. I think, the game's legacy, speaks for itself pretty well, despite all the everything it took to get there. So,
and it is kind of interesting that after the sequels that came out, all the way up to Quake, Quake 5 early with Champions, that people really liked Quake 1, and they would like it to do a reboot of that H.P. Lovecraft inspired dark, scary world. Even though the story over the years it was just like this rando process of making a game. What we did make was something that was actually pretty fun, and it did a lot of things, for the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's all the time we've got for today. But thank you so much for joining me and for walking through this landmark game in FPS history.
Yeah, thanks for remembering Quake, and thanks GDC for having me here to talk about it. It's been fun.
Yeah, thanks so much for the opportunity.
All right, yeah, anytime.